Okay, so welcome everyone to the virtual meeting for IOSH Chiltern branch, and I'm actually hosting this. It's the first one I've hosted, trying to take the pressure a little bit off Louise from doing absolutely everything. So hopefully it will go well. We've also got Richard White online and Brenton, who will help with any IT issues that come up. One of the things that we've decided to do after the first sort of 1 or 2 meetings is that we'll be locking the meeting at 1:10 so in about 4 minutes. And this just means that nobody else can come in. Unfortunately, it does mean that if your connection drops out, you won't be able to get back in. But we are recording the session, and that will be on LinkedIn later on. If you've not done a Zoom meeting before, then just remember there is the sort of icon bar which might appear at the top or the bottom of your screen or the side of the screen, and we are asking people to be interactive. Use the chat facility. So somewhere on your screen there'll be a chat button, depending on the sort of device that you're using. So please do that. And if you haven't already done so, if you can put your name on the screen so we can see who you are, and preferably leave video on, but if you can't use video for some reason, then at least have your name on the screen. What else is there? We've also got the raise your hand function, which is under the participants, if I remember correctly. Then there's the actions there that you can raise your hand. So if you do want to ask a question, raise your hand, and either Richard or Brenton, one of us will bring you in and unmute you. If you're not actually talking, if you could stay muted, it just stops the background noise for us. Introduce yourself in the chat box. Let's make sure we use that. And again, Richard and others will be keeping an eye on that. So back to today, obviously we'll go through a little bit of IOSH news. This really is aiming to support branch members during the crisis and keep us all connected with each other. I've certainly found it very useful to have these meetings each week. And just to connect with each other. The meeting today is with Zoe Davies, using language to influence IOSH behaviour and culture. I think this is one that I'm particularly interested in. I know my language often focuses on the negative, on the sort of the accidents and such like that can happen. So it'll be interesting to see what Zoe has to say about maybe changing that. Right, let's move on. There we go. As many of you will know, IOSH Chiltern is really keen on Twitter. So if you're on Twitter, please use the IOSH Chiltern name there and the hashtag IOSH Chiltern to get things out, and tweet about what we're doing today and what we do other times. If you're not on Twitter, then join and get on there and see what it's all about. There's some good stuff comes up on that. I did mention earlier on about LinkedIn. We're using the IOSH Chiltern branch page a lot more these days. Slides or links to the slides will go onto the IOSH Chiltern branch after today's meeting, and we'll also use that to answer any questions that we couldn't actually reach during the meeting. I know that Zoe's got to finish at 2 o'clock, so if there are questions we can't get to, then we'll get to them afterwards. Little bit about what we're going to be covering over the next few weeks. So yeah, today we've got we've got Zoe talking about this positive language. There's some other meetings coming up, so we are doing them regularly. Next week, looking at CPD and IPD, and how we can do that, and the sort of whole competency framework around IOSH. I won't go through all of those, just a couple to point out though. I think the 17th of June is one just to remember. That's at 9 AM because we've been joined by Greg Dearsley from New Zealand. So that's so that he's presenting quite in the middle of the night over there. So that will be a really interesting one to see how they're dealing with things in New Zealand. And then the last one on there, the men's mental health one, is one that's being put together at the moment, and that will be a really interesting one, particularly given what's happening at the moment. In terms of IOSH news, there's why is that finished? Sorry about this. Why is that? There we go. So in terms of sort of news from IOSH, there's a few things that are coming out. There are the weekly IOSH webinars, with one being tomorrow covering returning safely after lockdown, sorry, COVID-19 issues, and the returning safely after lockdown. The one at the top there is IOSH Chiltern Committee. We are still very actively looking for new members to join the committee. We have been joined recently by Kurt Cadet from the Caribbean branch in Trinidad. Kurt joined us for a committee meeting last week, I think it was, and he's very keen to contribute to the committee. So if there's anyone out there, doesn't really matter where you are in the world, we are forging ahead with having people from different areas looking to join us. So if you're interested, just give one of us a shout. So I'm on the committee, Louise, Richard, Brenton, Tim, David Thomas on there. I'm not sure who else is on at the moment. I can't see everyone. But just give one of us a shout, and we will talk you through what's involved and what you'd like to do. A number of links there that will all be available on LinkedIn in terms of other branches and IOSH guidance, etc. Couple of things to just point out. The one at the top here on the right, the Shape Our Future, is the membership grade review. That actually ends tomorrow. So if you haven't taken part in that, please do so. The more people that take part, the better the results will reflect the membership of IOSH. And the one below that is about whether you can play the part. Nominations are open for council elections, and we've actually got 2 people online, I believe, that may want to just have a quick chat about that. Kieran, would you like to just say a few words about IOSH Council?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. As David would say, my name is Kieran Delaney. I've been on council now for a number of years. This is going into my 2nd term. I would ask each and every one of you to seriously consider going forward for council. My rationale is that you're participating in today's webinar, and quite a number of you I recognise from other webinars and meetings that I've attended. It's your opportunity to influence how IOSH is going to progress. It's a very, very simple process. Paperwork is available. If anybody needs any information, what I'll do is I will put my email address and the phone number up on the chat facility so that people can give me a ring. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I would be delighted to talk anybody through the process. I have been advocating for a long time for people to run for council, and if you consider that when I was first elected to council, there were only 12 people went forward for 12 spaces. Last year, because a number of us went out there and actively sought new candidates, we had a record, and Louise can correct me, I think it was 45 or 46 candidates. And this, and I will leave you with this. Anybody who says that if you're down at the end of the ballot sheet that you're in trouble, that's a load of tosh, because both Jesse Gomez and myself were way down the list, and both of us returned. It's what you put into the document, it's how you put yourself across, and I hope to see one of you shortly joining us in the council chamber to help us shape the future of IOSH going forward. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Kieran. Couple of other bits, just briefly. The last point on that slide that came out on Connect, the auto renewal emails from IOSH are not being sent out. It doesn't mean they're not looking to renew things. It's just that they are going to talk to people. They're going to phone to people whose memberships are due for renewal in the coming weeks, so that they can talk to people and take a more individual view if anyone's struggling in any way as to what help is available. So if your membership is coming up for renewal and you haven't had that email, then the likelihood is you'll get either a personal email or a phone call to discuss options with you. So that's happening at the moment. And I think with that, we'll move over to Zoe, who's going to talk to us about use of positive language in an OSH environment.
Great, thank you very much. I will.
I'll stop sharing as well.
Yeah, and then I will pop up hopefully, and I can see everyone. Great, lovely to see everybody, and thank you very much for having me join your session today. I've heard great things about this group, and actually Faye Rockley, who I work with, a fantastic health and safety advisor, she's actually a member of this branch. So I'm not sure if she's online, but I've heard great things. Okay, so just to start off, before I move on to putting any slides up on the screen, I can see you, and you can hopefully all see each other. I want to ask you a question about dating. So I want you to put your hands up if you've ever been on a date. So if you've ever been on a date, show me your hands. Yeah, I think we're pretty much, yeah, good. And keep your hands up if you were asked on that date what you do for a living. Yeah, standard question. Okay. Now keep your hands up if you didn't admit that you work in health and safety. Now, I would be lying if I said to you that, yep, I tell everybody I go on a date with that I work in health and safety. But actually, I find myself justifying my chosen career because people have a poor perception of it. I often either say I work in risk management or I'm a health and safety advisor, but I do it for sport, entertainment and TV. Trust me, I'm not boring. So it got me thinking about why health and safety has this naff reputation. Why is it uncool? Now, I don't need to convince you, people who have given up their lunch hour for a safety webinar, that it's a good thing. It's a great career choice and a way of helping people and saving lives. We're all on this webinar as we already get it. So perhaps this is a good moment to introduce myself and give you some context of where we're going to be looking at today. So I went to University College London and I studied French for 4 years, and we took on a breadth of subjects within that, from literature to translation to use of language through to history, culture and psychology. Now couple that with a few good years in sales, in real estate, corporate hospitality and retail, and I've actually ended up with an eclectic mix of an understanding of how to sell and how the design of our message and culture influences language. Now, I work for IMG Endeavour, which is one of the biggest sports media entertainment companies around, and I'm the subject matter expert on health and safety, and I've been there actually for just over 9 years. It just popped up on my screen this week. And before that, I was doing the health and safety thing in construction, in cranes to be exact, big passion of mine. And now I'm supporting private clients too. So having studied and then having worked in different cultures and seeing how the language changes within those, I've had the opportunity to critically analyse how culture affects language and safety and vice versa. So what you say and how you say it is one of, if not the biggest influences of safety culture in your business and across our various industries. As practitioners, we are accountable for both the messaging and reputation that health and safety holds. Essentially, we are the magazine cover for the world of health and safety. Now, I mentioned that I work with Faye Rockley. She's fantastic, and we often make reference to our brand, the PR of our own department within our own company. Okay, I'm going to turn my video off and then pop some slides up on the screen for you, and hopefully they will come up in the right place. Okay, Richard, does that look like Del Boy? Is Del Boy up on the screen there?
We're not sharing your screen yet, I'm afraid, Zoe.
Oh. Okay, hang on a second. All righty. All right, that should look a little bit more like it.
Okay, you're live.
And you have Del Boy. Okay. So I want to ask you the question, how do you convince people that they need to do health and safety? Do you use carrots? Do you use encouraging factors? Or do you use sticks? Do you scare them into it? Or are we looking outside the box and leaning on well-versed examples from other industries with tools such as nudge theory, user experience and user interface designs are the norm? And what is the language of these techniques successful, and how can we use it in health and safety? Now, if health and safety was a new brand, how would you convince your clients that they need it in the same way that consumers believe they need a new handbag or the latest sports trainers or a smartphone? Okay, I'm going to ask for a volunteer. I'd like somebody to join me in a quick task. If somebody could just unmute themselves and introduce themselves. Fastest.
I might as well do it.
Go on, is that Kieran?
It is, Zoe. How are you?
Hi. Right. Okay, now let's see if you've got the gift of the gab. Kieran, I want you to have a look around you for an item, something that you think is really great, probably have a little bit of value. And what I want you to do is sell that item to everybody on this chat. So you've got 60 seconds. I want you to convince them to buy it from you, tell them how great it is, how they must have one, how it will help them. This is your elevator pitch. You've got 60 seconds. I want you to be the Del Boy of an item of your choice. 60 seconds to tell them why they need it. Ready?
Here we go. Whoops, can I do this? Right, see this? This is the second monitor here that you can attach onto your laptop. All you have to do is use a little lead like so. Means that you double your productivity. Very, very cheap, only £30. You can go along, instead of having to flick back and forth between screens on your laptop, you just go along and connect onto the screen. Just slide it back and forth with your mouse or with your fingers on the mouse pad. Very, very efficient, very, very effective. And when you buy it, obviously, it's going to be tax deductible. So whether it's the Revenue Commissioners in Ireland or HMRC, you've got lovely jubbly savings.
Brilliant, time's up. Thank you very much. Okay, you can pop yourself on mute, but I will probably bring you back on in a little while. So for those of you that were being sold to, I want you to think about, would you buy the item? Did you feel overly sold to? Sometimes when we use overly positive language, we feel a little bit sold to, a little bit of the Del Boy giving it to us. And some of you may go, okay, yeah, who is this guy? Like, what kind of reputation does he have? Is he credible? Is he just a bit of a chancer with a good accent and is charming me into buying this item? So the elevator pitch doesn't always work. It's a little bit too salesy when we apply it to health and safety. So, Kieran, you might have given them the benefits and the rewards and the gains, but do you know if these are even something that they want? So let's take a little look at science-based selling. So science-based selling combines social psychology, neuroscience, and behavioral economics, and makes the sales process all about the buyer and their needs. Working out someone's needs is one of the most powerful skills in sales. Now, the 4 big reasons, I know it's typically legal, moral, financial, but for me, reputation is the big dog out of all of them. So these are our big 4 sells, the big 4 reasons we do H&S. Now, we're probably all really good at reeling off the legal reasons and the threat of uninsurable fines and or imprisonment, but what do you have in your bag of tools for selling the moral and reputational reasons for managing safety, the positive reasons? Our own personal motivations as health and safety practitioners has a strong bearing on the way we sell and represent health and safety. So let's say I did nothing at work all week. I just messed around on the internet, maybe started a bit of summer shopping. I may get some grief from my boss, but I will likely still get paid. Now, if I was a freelance consultant and I did nothing all week, then I'd very likely be missing out on some income. Now, recently on pages such as LinkedIn, I've seen people advertising their services and using heavy language to scare people into using them. And I quote, "It is a legal requirement for all businesses in the UK to have a chartered health and safety advisor." Folks, we know this is wrong. I quote, "Businesses that do not have a retained health and safety advisor are liable to investigation and fines from the HSE. That's not quite right, is it? There's a little bit too much stick here. Whilst these are partially correct, they are fundamentally incorrect and are damaging to the reputation we have. Now, people buy people. People buy from people they trust. We've probably all been sold something in the past by someone we liked, we were charmed by, and then we got the item home and we wondered why we spent our money on it. We bought into that person. The language we use, health and safety practitioners, will affect how people trust us and critically buy into what we're selling. Now, we often see people overcomplicate it as a way of potentially protecting our RIP, as it were. We want to make sure it's accessible, and that is the skill here in using your toolbox with regards to reputational and moral reasons. Okay, let me show you Charles Duhigg's habit loop model for influencing people's behaviours and how it's used in sales. Now, the habit loop, you can drive the almost unconscious behaviours. It's brilliant. It uses the cognitive function of cue, action, reward to sell a product. For example, Pepsodent, which is a toothpaste, Hopkins, so he was the ad man of toothpaste. He realised this and changed the ad campaigns to a cue, and the cue was, "Oh, my teeth feel dirty." The action, you brush the teeth with this wonderful frothing minty Pepsodent, and the reward was teeth that were feeling clean. Similarly for Febreze, and if you watch the Febreze adverts, you see the person go around their house, sniff it, it's a bit stinky, spray the Febreze, and the reward is everything feels wonderful. Paul O'Neill, who was CEO of Alcoa, has used, again, the habit model to influence safety culture by recognising that reward is career progression. And by keeping the cue, the accident, and inserting a new action, reporting, the leadership is conditioned to help with improving the safety culture. Now, a critical part of the sales and marketing model is to know and understand your customers. So, who are we selling H&S to? I started my career in cranes and construction, and now I have a very different customer. I've spent the last 9 years working for a real mix of sport and media entertainment types. And we have a global presence, so we have very different cultures across the regions. These people are bright, they're quick thinking, and even within the same company, there are very different cultures and very different language sets. Taking time to get to know your customer is absolutely key. More often than not, we see processes, forms, and procedures designed without the user in mind. I absolutely love this image. It's critical to understand health and safety from their angle so that you can design your message and your solution to fit what they're looking for. Now, we have an amazing range of people from central services right through to sports producers and agents. So what we design in terms of our health and safety offering really needs to be curated. I probably use this word a lot. Whilst we will have global frameworks for maybe training, processes, procedures and policies, we'll curate those down to the regions and then curate them further for the culture and the type of people we're working with. So I've had 3 sales jobs in my pre-health and safety career, and all 3 taught me the same tactics. So Foxton's an estate agency in central London. So when someone came in to look to buy, we would ask them questions. Where are you currently living? What do you want to change about it? What's the one thing you couldn't compromise on? Why are you looking in this area? What do you think about the market at the moment? So we didn't go straight in with, here's a 2-bed, second floor, etc., etc. We spent our time finding out about them. Question-based selling helped me gather information about the needs and wants of my buyers, but also helped them trust me as someone who is genuinely interested in their search, rather than someone giving them a pile of brochures. It meant that I could use that information that they gave me in order to help close the deal further down the line. Okay, Kieran, if you could unmute, and if I could ask somebody else to unmute, one more volunteer, quickest finger first, unmute and introduce yourself, please. Hopefully somebody will.
Hello, John Hughes.
I knew you were going to do that, John Hughes. Thanks. This is going to be fun.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Right. So, Kieran, you're going to be the salesman again, and John,
Thanks.
John, you're going to be the customer. Kieran, I want you to have another stab at selling. I'm not even sure what it was you were selling, a monitor or something. I can't see you, so I couldn't see the visual. But I want you to have another go at selling it to John. So I want you to find out about what he currently has, what he likes about it, any kind of problems he's got with it, anything he'd like to change about it, and then reposition what you've got to fill the gaps using the information he's told you. And you've got 60 seconds to do it. Now, John, don't make it too difficult for him, okay?
Don't worry, he knows what I'll do to him if he does.
Go with me on this, folks. Okay, so you've got 60 seconds to have a go at question-based selling. Okay, off you go.
Hi, John.
Hello, Kieran.
Thanks for agreeing to meet me. John, what have you got in your office set up at the moment to help you get the best out of your day as regards IT?
I've got my laptop that sits over to my side, and in front of me, I've got a single screen.
Right. Have you ever thought of using another screen, but one that you can flick around so that you can have it on an A4, basically a portrait instead of a landscape, to make it easier for you to read documents in one go instead of scrolling up and down, thereby easing your hand and not having RSIs?
Yeah, I've not thought of that, Kieran. So how could that help me?
Well, what it is that if you consider the amount of time that you spend scrolling up and down a document, whereas with this monitor, you can go along and put an attachment, an arm at the back, turn it to its side. It's going to be the exact same format as your A4 sheet of paper, so you're able to read everything on the document in one go, thereby enabling you to edit the document as you're going along, and a lot more time effective. You're going to get through a hell of a lot more work and easier on you.
So is your second screen landscape or is it portrait shape?
It's basically, you can do either. What it is that you can put an arm on it and it basically adjusts it. So you can either have it a portrait or a landscape, whichever you need.
Okay, your 60 seconds is up. I'm going to stop you there for a second. So, Kieran and John, who asked the most questions in that 60 seconds?
I felt I did.
No, you asked one, and then John asked you about the product. So you asked him, what has he got that helps him with his work?
Yeah.
Would he consider something else? And then you went on to talk about the product. So actually, we haven't learned much about what John has, what he likes about it, what he doesn't like about it, and what his particular setup is. So it's a really simple trap that everybody falls into when we know in H&S that what we're selling, health and safety management systems, solutions, etc., we know that it's bloody brilliant stuff and you've really got to have it. But when we're selling something, sometimes we fall into the trap of telling them about it rather than really digging down, asking probably a ratio of 6-to-1 questions from the person that we're trying to sell the product to. Okay, if you mute yourselves and you can sit down, thank you very much for volunteering on the stage. You can see from the picture that I've got here, there are so many instances when the design of something, the designer thinks this looks wonderful, but actually the user wants something totally different. And that's why if any of you have ever built apps, the money that you invest in user interface and user experience designers really, really pays off. Okay, so another part of understanding your client and helping you to understand where you trim your language is to consider what generation they sit within and how it affects their values, their needs and their wants. So here's a snapshot of the 4 main generations that we have in the workplace. Now by 2021, the workplace will have about 20% Generation Zs. So I'm millennial. I sit pretty much in the middle of millennial, and I have to question, like say to myself, how well do I know a Generation Z? How do I know how to train them? How do I know how to communicate with them? Similarly, within generations the other way of my own. Now, McKinsey have done a great study into this, and they're looking at it more from a marketing viewpoint, but for the health and safety professional, this stuff is gold. It helps us understand our audiences, our clients, and the training of our attendees. These slides will be shared, so don't worry too much about trying to get this all down. But looking at this McKinsey report, they've split the generations and they look at how they consume information. So if we look at, okay, my generation, I'm a Gen Y, I'm millennial, I'm born in '84. So my context, it's globalization, economic stability and the emergence of the internet. Now that compares to the next generation, Gen Z. They're looking at social networks, they're digital natives, they went to school with iPads in their hands. Looking at the behaviour of the generations, my generation tends to be quite globalist, we're questioning and we're orientated to self. When actually you look at Gen Z, and you'll see it now already on LinkedIn, they're undefined. They'll often have several job titles or no job title. They're a dialoguer and they're quite realistic. So what do they consume? A millennial will try to consume experiences, so festival and travel and flagships, whereas a Gen Z will look for uniqueness, no kind of loyalty and an ethical approach to what they do. Another part of understanding your clients, consider what generation they sit in and how it affects their values. Oh, sorry, I'm just clicking on the wrong notes there. Now, some of the main differences between Gen Z and millennials is that we should be considering when communicating and asking them to consume our messaging. So millennials, tech savvy, communicate with brevity, we're curators and sharers, now focused. But Gen Z, they're tech innate, so they tend to have 5 screens. I don't know if you've ever delivered training to Gen Zs. They can quite comfortably listen to what you're telling them whilst being on maybe 1 or 2 apps at the same time. Now, observation is key. I want you to consider within the people that you're working with how they communicate amongst themselves. Are they using apps such as Slack and Trello to organise and communicate? And if so, then we as advisors need to familiarise ourselves and go into their space and communicate with them there. Do they learn and communicate on multiple platforms, or is the traditional one-day classroom less effective? And should we move to a part class, part online learning framework? What about videos? Now, within my team, we've adjusted the methods we use to communicate guidance. We started looking at videos, webinars, knowledge top-ups, 20 minutes, the kind of TEDx style way of presenting as our workforce is getting younger and younger. Okay, so let's look at the language you use when we're talking about things we know really well, things we know like the back of our hand. And I'm talking about the risk assessment here. Now, I'm not going to tell you that positive language is the answer. As you've seen so far, there's a little bit more to how we design our approach, how we listen and how we understand the client we're selling the concept of risk management to. I'm going to look at this example briefly today with you, but it's something I've covered off in more detail at another talk I gave last year, specifically about rebranding the risk assessment. But let me take you through the approach briefly. Okay, Romeo and Juliet, Act 2, Scene 2. Juliet is talking about Romeo and she's declaring her love for him. And she says, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet, meaning that a rose would still smell the same even if it wasn't called a rose. So can a risk assessment be the same if you don't call it a risk assessment? Now, I've worked a lot in India and Jakarta, where there is little or no health and safety law, and the concept of a risk assessment is not known. It got me thinking about why we ask for risk assessments from suppliers and contractors. Why do we need it? Why do I need to know? What is it that I need to actually know and understand? Was this just about covering our backs? So I'm not going to do this exercise now because I'm a little short on time with you, but what I would recommend you do is spend 60 seconds to yourselves after this and see if you can describe a risk assessment to somebody and how to do it without using these words on the screen. These are words that are really familiar to us and our culture, but possibly not to people who are not health and safety practitioners. And sometimes this is a really good task to use in a job interview because, let's face it, once you've done your qualifications, you can pretty much Google all the answers for the technical knowledge with H&S, but actually the skills we're looking for now are far more about emotional and personal intelligence. So we've done this before, and we've kind of said, in our bag of tools, we need to have a variety of ways of describing something so that basically you can communicate effectively with different clients. The skill is being able to understand what the law requires, know the guidance and standards inside and out, and then to be able to translate them into the best fit for your client. Okay, I'm going to leave you with these 3 instructions. Number 1, remove the language barriers. So come out of the comfort zone and have practiced ways of explaining health and safety to different people. Not just the legal and financial, but I'm really talking about having some really solid ways of looking and describing the moral and reputational reasons. Think about how you'd explain health and safety to a grandparent, a teenager, or a peer who works in a country where health and safety doesn't exist. Number 2, get to know your clients, how they communicate and how they consume. There's lots of research out there that will tell you about them before you've even met them. So make sure you go to their level and make it as easy as possible for them to tell you their needs and wants so that you can sell it back to them. Think about a 6-to-1 question ratio. And while you're there, go and get sold to. Let someone sell something to you and then analyze why that worked. Why did you spend 100 quid on new trainers when you've already got 3 pairs at home? Did you buy into a brand? Why? You possibly bought into a concept, a lifestyle, and a person. Remember, people will buy people. And finally, 3, review your current guidance and processes. Is it fit for the user and the variations of users, or is it something that the H&S team think is great? Grant, that's everything from me. I'm going to say thank you very much for having me on your session today. If you want to stay in touch, then I am on the socials at ZKD and on LinkedIn. I have a podcast coming out called Safety Poker, and you can also click onto my YouTube channel if you just search for Zoe Davies H&S. And I'll be putting this and other talks that I've given onto that YouTube channel as well. Great. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, then let me know. And I shall stop sharing my screen.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Zoe. Very enlightening. I know, I'm not sure how many questions we've got. I know David Thomas, you said you've got an example of, I think that was when we were talking about positive. Did you want to just